The Fated Enemy and the Alpha of the Forgotten Tribe. A full-length Fated Mate story by Grace Cruz. Chapter 1. The Cold Comfort of the Citadel. The metallic scent of the air purifier was Kira's constant companion. It was the smell of safety. It meant the dangerous, messy world of the shifters, the real world, was outside. But was it? Her life was built on razor wire. Precise, dangerous, and cold. Kira Vane stood at attention in her sterile gray quarters within the Citadel, a fortress that looked like a sleek monument to control. She was a weapon, honed by years of training under Alpha Corvus's organization, which claimed to be the ultimate defense force for all civil shifters. Truth be told, she didn't know what scared her more, the savages they hunted, or the sheer ruthless efficiency of the people she served. Kira's focus. Her immediate goal was to appear flawless. Her greater goal was to survive another day without the wolf collar gene giving her away. Her internal flaw, misbelief, that duty and safety are found only in absolute control and obedience, was the mantra that kept her alive. The Citadel was everything she had been raised to revere: glass, steel, and silence. But then, a low, discordant hum began beneath her ribs, a vibration that had nothing to do with the Citadel's massive generator. It was her blood, her curse. She pressed a hand to her sternum, breathing slow, measured breaths. No matter how hard she tried, the latent power, a power that felt like liquid, raw sound wanting to escape her throat, was becoming harder to contain. She pushed it down, trapping the wild song beneath layers of fear and discipline. A chime sounded. The video feed flickered on, revealing the polished, unreadable face of Alpha Corvus. Hunter Vane. His voice was smooth, like oil on glass. It commanded authority. Not only that, but his presence always managed to amplify the cold air in the room, making her shiver despite the controlled temperature. "Alpha," Kira responded, her voice a flat, steady instrument. "You've been chosen for the highest priority objective in 2 decades. Corvus leaned closer, the camera focusing on the chilling flatness of his eyes. "The whispers of a forgotten tribe have reached our perimeter. We dismissed them as folklore, a desperate bid for relevance by an extinct lineage." Kira felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room. The forgotten tribe. A story told to frighten pups into obedience, yet the story was clearly enough to warrant her attention. "They are led by an alpha," Corvus continued, as the silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken stakes. "His name is Ronan. He is savage, unstable, and most importantly, he poses a direct threat to the order we have worked so hard to maintain. Your mission is simple, Vane. Elimination." The word hung in the air, cold, final. In that moment, Kira felt the weight of her destiny press down on her. Was this fate, or a test? She hated the idea of a savage leader because it fed the very narrative that kept her organization and her family in power. Still, a mission was a mission. "My initial goal is to successfully complete this mission," she confirmed, her internal thought a contradiction. "To kill him is to protect my secret. To protect my secret is to maintain the lie." Corvus smiled, a thin, meaningless gesture that didn't touch his eyes. Because of that smile, a fresh wave of unease washed over her. Maybe it was fate, but the surge of raw energy she had been fighting pulsed again, hotter this time, just as Corvus ended the transmission. Kira stood alone, the gray light of the Citadel reflecting off her face. What followed was a rapid inventory of gear, but her mind was elsewhere, focused on the wild name, Ronan. To make things worse, a quiet thought surfaced. What if the lie is not the forgotten tribe's existence, but the safety I think I've found here? This fear, a creeping viper of doubt, was a new subplot, the slow, painful cracking of her misbelief. She had to succeed, not for Corvus, but for the silence of her own blood. Chapter 2. The Ambush and the Collision of Destinies. The cold, sterile steel of the Citadel's transport was a memory. The world around Kira now was the biting scent of pine and decay, the thick, heavy silence of the forbidden territory. Kira's focus: execute the mission. Her core strength, unwavering conviction, was honed into a lethal edge, pushing out all thought, all feeling. She was an empty vessel, ready to pull the trigger. She had spent 12 hours tracking him, a silent predator against a ghost. She located him near a narrow, overgrown river, the rumored edge of the Sunken Lands. He was immense, a man barely contained by his own skin, tearing into the remains of a fresh elk. He wasn't feeding, he was devouring. It was a raw, primal scene that confirmed every chilling detail from Corvus's files. Savage, unstable. She settled her specialized tranquilizer rifle. She didn't want to watch the beast. She wanted the target. She wanted the safety of the mission accomplished. Snap. The shot was perfect, meant to hit a key nerve cluster. But then, the world moved too fast. Ronan, all muscle, scars, and dark, unruly hair, moved with the liquid speed of a striking viper. He wasn't just fast. He was primal. He sidestepped the dart, his massive body twisting just as the specialized needle whispered past his ear. A low, subterranean growl rattled the air, shaking the moss off the rocks. Before she could move, he was on her. Pacing shift. Fast, intense action. She dropped the rifle, her body moving on instinct, a blur of practiced defense. Her combat knife, razor-sharp and designed for shifters, flashed in her hand. Not a hunter. A predator, she corrected, her mind finally catching up to the speed of the fight. He didn't grab her weapon. He grabbed her wrist, crushing bone and sinew together. She felt the searing heat of his skin through her tactical gloves. He was stronger than anything she had ever trained against. She went low, aiming a kick at his knee. He countered not with skill, but with pure, overwhelming force, slamming her back against the rough bark of a pine tree. Crack. She felt the air explode from her lungs. The metallic tang of her own blood filled her mouth. She looked up. Ronan's face was inches from hers, sweat slicking his jaw, his breath hot and ragged. His eyes. They weren't the yellow of aggression she expected. They were molten gold, burning with a savage, intoxicating fire. Climax, turning point, the mate bond. In the span of a breath, the mate bond hit them both. It wasn't a connection, it was a collision. It was a white-hot, violent surge of recognition, a primal truth that overrode every line of logic, every ounce of discipline. Her blood sang, the hidden wolf-caller lineage recognizing the supreme alpha. Ronan froze, the immense power of his hand loosening infinitesimally on her wrist. Mine, a silent, possessive roar echoed not in her ears, but deep in her soul. No, impossible. Enemy. Kira's internal denial was a frantic wave crashing against a mountain. Her meticulously controlled life, just like that, everything changed. Ronan's eyes widened, the fierce light softening into a dangerous primal wonder, laced with fury. As the bond pulsed between them, she felt his internal battle, the rage of the primal wolf fighting the human need to claim her. "You tried to kill me," Ronan grated, his voice a raw sound of shock and ownership. "It was my mission," she gasped, the truth an agonizing lie on her tongue. "Your mission is irrelevant," he snarled, hauling her against his chest, the contact terrifying and electrifying. The space between them burned. The lie ended the moment his eyes, burning with a savage, intoxicating fire, met mine. Ronan's focus, his primal loyalty demanded he protect his mate. His human intelligence screamed that the enemy should be destroyed. His immediate goal was to claim and contain her. Without another word, Ronan swept her up, throwing her over his shoulder with brutal ease. He plunged into the dense thicket away from the perimeter, toward the heart of the Sunken Lands. She didn't know what scared her more: the betrayal of her own blood, or the terrifying, undeniable fire of the alpha who had just claimed her. Her deactivated gear, left behind, lay quietly on the moss, a silent beacon for the Citadel hunters who would surely follow. Chapter 3: captive in the shadow of the Alpha. By the time Ronan dragged her into the cavernous hidden camp of the Forgotten Tribe, Kira was reeling. The physical violence of the capture was nothing compared to the violent emotional hijacking of the mate bond. The camp was not the savage den she had expected. It was a rugged sanctuary carved into the earth, ringed by ancient, powerful-smelling pines. The tribesmen were wary, scarred, but they moved with a focused, quiet dignity that belied the Citadel's propaganda. Kira's focus: escape. Her internal flaw was raging. She had to regain control. She would not submit to the bond. She would not be the weakness that undid her family. Ronan shoved her into a small, dry cave, a prisoner's cell reinforced by heavy stones. He blocked the entrance, his sheer size an immediate obstacle. "Do you think this will hold me?" Kira spat, rubbing her bruised wrist. Ronan's focus: maintain the fragile order of his tribe while managing the volatile distraction that was his mate. He needed her contained until he could understand this catastrophic twist of fate. "It will hold you, because I tell it to hold you," Ronan countered, his voice low, a controlled rumble that made the air in the cave vibrate. In the echo of his voice, the mate bond answered, an electric shiver running down her spine. Damn it. "You're wrong about us," she insisted, leaning on the systemic propaganda of her organization. "The Citadel protects the balance. Your tribe, you're the danger. You're the reason order is necessary." Ronan looked at her, his golden eyes narrowed with scorn and something deeper: pain. He didn't know what scared her more, the untamed beast in his eyes, or the raw honesty of his love. "Order?" he challenged, stepping closer, closing the distance between them until his scent, smoke, moss, and pure, intoxicating alpha, suffocated her denial. The air thickened around them. "We are forgotten because of their order. They hunted us systematically, not because we were savage, but because our strength threatened their rule. They lied about us to make you their perfect weapon." Dialogue tension building. "Lies don't make me your mate, Ronan," Kira whispered, her voice trembling despite her resolve. "No, fate made you mine. Yet you still fight it." He reached out, his calloused thumb brushing the skin beneath her jaw. The touch was agonizingly tender, a stark contrast to his rough exterior. As fire bloomed beneath her skin, she fought the instinctive lean toward his heat. "I fight it because I was taught that uncontrolled desire is a sickness, a path to destruction," she said, her chest tight. "And I was taught that controlled duty is a cage built by the real monsters," he retorted, his thumb tracing the fierce line of her jaw. "My wolf wants to chain you to me. My human side wants to see that ice shatter," which meant, either way, you break. It was a standoff of ideologies, a battle fought not with claws, but with will. Ronan pulled his hand away, the space suddenly cold. Just like that, the moment of intimacy was shattered by a new kind of tension. Subplot world-building hook. "They're coming," Ronan stated, turning to inspect the cave entrance. "Who?" "Your saviors." As the wind shifted, Ronan's keen shifter senses detected the intrusion long before any human could. "Your deactivated gear was a beacon, Hunter. Not only that, but the scent of your blood on my fur. It's a challenge they can't ignore. They think they've lost an asset, so they will probe, and they will kill." He looked back at her, his golden eyes filled with grim necessity. "You can cling to your control here, Hunter. Or you can use your skills to help defend the lies you were taught to believe. Either way, the choice forces you to live." Kira's mind raced. Fight with the Alpha of the Forgotten Tribe? Against her own people? The irony was a bitter taste. Despite that, her survival instincts kicked in. She had trained her entire life for this, and she wouldn't die a prisoner. "Give me a weapon," she demanded, her voice regaining its hunter steel. "I fight my own battles." Ronan smiled, a fierce, genuine flash of teeth that sent a shiver of volatile excitement down her spine. In the quiet that followed, the sound of branches snapping closer to their perimeter set up the inevitable clash. Chapter 4. Blood and Bonding. The heavy footsteps had turned into a full-out charge. Ronan didn't wait. He moved, his body a blur of savage defense, pulling Kira with him toward the cave mouth. "Stay to my left. No flanking," she barked, her hunter training taking over. She didn't ask. She commanded. Ronan hesitated, his golden eyes flashing in disbelief at the tone. Even so, the efficiency in her voice was undeniable. He positioned himself, his massive frame shielding her as 3 hunters clad in dark, familiar armor, burst through the pines. What followed was a brutal dance. Ronan was raw power, his snarls tearing the air, his blade moving with the primal speed of his wolf. He wasn't trained. He was a machine of sheer kinetic force. On the other hand, Kira was precision. She moved like water, ducking under Ronan's sweeping attacks to target the exposed joints and pressure points of the hunters. One hunter, her former colleague, lunged at Ronan's unprotected flank. Without thinking, Kira screamed a warning and drove her knife into the hunter's shoulder. The man cried out, stumbling back. Ronan immediately slammed his elbow into the hunter's face, a sickening crunch echoing through the forest. "I didn't ask for your help, Hunter," Ronan growled, his voice thick with exertion, yet he hadn't reprimanded her for the command. "I didn't offer it," Kira shot back, dodging a heavy stun baton. Because of that, they settled into a horrifying rhythm, 2 enemies, moving as a single, lethal unit. The air thickened with the scent of pine sap, spilled blood, and the ozone of the stun devices. With his scent in the air, the mate bond pulsed, not just with desire, but with a terrifying sense of mutual purpose. It was a dizzying contradiction. The closer they were in battle, the more violently her spirit claimed him. "The beast I was sent to kill is the only thing keeping me alive." They dispatched the scouts swiftly, leaving 3 motionless bodies in the dirt. Silence dropped, heavy and sudden, broken only by their ragged breathing. Ronan turned to her, his chest heaving, his eyes still burning gold. He didn't look victorious. He looked furious. "The way you move? I know those tactics," he accused, wiping blood from his cheek with the back of his hand. "They're standard issue," Kira lied, knowing the movements she used were personalized, elite, and exclusive to Alpha Corvus's top enforcers. That night, she realized she was exposed in ways she hadn't anticipated. Climax of the scene. Mate bond flare. Ronan stepped closer, his gaze predatory. As the silence stretched, he reached out and grabbed her chin, tilting her face up to his. His eyes weren't angry now. They were hungry. "The lies run deep in you, little hunter. But your wolf sings when we fight." Which meant you felt that too. The raw intimacy of the moment was terrifying. As the bond pulsed, a sharp electric pain shot through her, forcing a choked sound from her throat. This was the inciting incident playing out physically. "Don't," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Don't what? Tell the truth?" he challenged. "You hate me. You were sent to destroy my last hope. Yet, your body screams for mine." He leaned in, his lips brushing her ear, his breath hot and ragged. "You smell of the enemy, but you taste of destiny." He released her as suddenly as he grabbed her, stepping back to fight the surge of his own primal wolf. In the quiet that followed, the sheer force of their conflicting emotions hung in the air, thick and volatile. "They will send more," Kira stated, forcing her composure back, using logic as a shield against the dizzying attraction. Because of that, she had a brief moment of leverage. "If we stay, your tribe dies. We need to run, and I know where they won't follow." Ronan looked at the dense, swirling mist at the far edge of the trees, the mythical boundary to the Sunken Lands. He saw the bodies of the hunters, the blood, and the devastating truth of his fated mate standing before him. Deep down, he knew the truth. She was the key to his survival, the perfect lure, and the only possible future. "The Sunken Lands," he confirmed, his voice barely a rasp. "We move now. To make things worse, we're taking the bodies. They will send Corvus's entire force if they think we've left evidence." Kira felt a surge of cold dread. The hunter she'd recognized, Sergeant Torin, was Corvus's personal guard. With every step he took, pulling her away from the small battlefield, the realization hit. Alpha Corvus already knows I am compromised. Chapter 5, Into the Mists of the Sunken Tribe. As the sky darkened, Ronan led Kira and a small group of his most trusted warriors toward the swirling mist at the edge of the Sunken Lands. The air here wasn't just cold, it hummed with an ancient, resonant power. "This boundary," Ronan explained, his voice low enough to be intimate, yet authoritative enough for his warriors. "It's a veil, woven from the blood and sacrifice of our ancestors. It wards off technology, blocks their tracking, and masks our scent." "Sacrifice?" Kira questioned, her hunter logic fighting the sheer impossibility of the magic she felt pressing against her skin. "A word the Citadel erased," Ronan returned, glancing at her. Instead of answering her directly, he focused on the approaching mist. "You will feel a pull. Resist it. Trust me." Sensory details, world building. They stepped into the veil. As the wind shifted, the world went cold, then impossibly hot. Kira gasped. It felt like walking through thick honey and 1,000 tiny electric shocks simultaneously. The metallic, sterile scent of the outside world was instantly ripped away, replaced by the overpowering fragrance of wild jasmine, deep earth, and unbridled raw power. Next, they emerged. The Sunken Lands were not a myth. They were a reality that defied her worldview. Massive trees, luminous with silver moss, towered toward an perpetually twilight sky. Waterfalls cascaded into crystal blue pools, and the air was thick with a profound, almost spiritual silence. "Welcome to the ancient sanctuary," Ronan murmured, his voice softer here. Maybe it was fate, but the magic of the land seemed to quiet the rage in his eyes. Kira was momentarily speechless, her guard lowered by the sheer, impossible beauty. Her heart skipped a beat, betraying the disciplined hunter. "We were taught this land was just a fable to scare pups," she admitted, her voice low. "That it was savage and cursed." "It's cursed only to those who seek control," Ronan stated, leading her down a moss-covered path. Truth be told, Kira realized he wasn't entirely hostile anymore. He was a teacher, fiercely proud of his land. "Why hide?" Kira pressed. Because of that, she was challenging the foundational lie of her life. "Why not fight back?" Ronan stopped, his massive hand resting on the trunk of an ancient silvered tree. "My father told me stories of the last Great War. He said we were losing not because we were weak, but because the wolf caller, a single lineage destined to unify all shifters, was too exposed. We couldn't protect that destiny and win the war. So, we went underground. We chose the sanctuary to preserve the possibility of a future, rather than guarantee defeat in the present." Open-loop romantic tension. Kira froze, the implication a cold shock, the wolf caller, her family. This was the reason they needed to be hidden. "And where is this wolf caller now?" she asked, the question hanging heavy between them. Ronan turned, his golden gaze raking over her face, recognizing the sudden fear beneath her disciplined exterior. As her wolf stirred, he stepped closer. "He said the line was not lost," Ronan answered, his voice dropping to a seductive rasp. With a single glance, he let her know that he knew the truth about her. He said she would appear when the time was right, and she would be bound to the Alpha who survived. He didn't need to say the rest. The connection was the answer. Ronan led her to a secluded dwelling within the ancient roots. "You are the enemy here, Hunter, but you are also my mate. As if fate demanded it, you will stay close. No matter what secrets you hide, the destiny of my tribe now depends on your very existence." He sealed the door with an ancient, complex knot of hide and bark. Kira was alone, trapped not just by walls, but by a destiny she was raised to deny. Her world tilted entirely, leaving her with the dizzying, terrifying knowledge that she was the forgotten tribe's greatest threat and its only hope. Chapter 6. Clinging to the Lie. The raw scent of pine and magic was the first thing Kira woke to. Come morning, the sunlight filtering through the moss-covered trees cast an ethereal green light into her simple cell, which was not a cage of bars, but a cage of destiny. Her immediate motivation was to test the security. Her misbelief, safety is only found in control, demanded that she find a way out, physically and emotionally. She inspected the knot Ronan had used to seal the door. It wasn't a hunter's knot. It was a blend of natural fibers and shifter ingenuity, impossibly tight. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't pull it apart without alerting someone. Escape was not immediate. Subtlety was required. She pushed against the rough stone wall, trying to find a weak point, but then the wall seemed to vibrate with a low, magical hum, the boundary protection Ronan had mentioned. Because of that, she realized she was truly trapped by something far older and more powerful than the Citadel's technology. Dialogue and character clash. The hide curtain at the entrance rustled, and Ronan ducked inside, his massive frame filling the space. He carried a plate of smoked venison and wild berries. He looked tired, the shadows beneath his golden eyes deeper, but his demeanor was as dominant as ever. "Don't bother with the door," he stated, his voice a low, gravelly morning rumble. "The sanctuary recognizes the mate bond. If you try to run, it will trip you up." "The sanctuary recognizes nothing," Kira challenged, refusing the food. "It's a wall. I'm not a pet, Ronan. I'm a hunter. You kidnapped me, and I will not submit to some primal delusion." "Delusion?" Ronan countered, setting the plate down with a thud that echoed his irritation. He crossed his arms over his chest, emphasizing the intimidating swell of muscle. "You felt the current when we fought. Not only that, but your heartbeat speeds up when I enter this cave. That's why you're resisting, because it feels more real than the propaganda you were raised on." He stepped closer, deliberately invading her space. As the bond pulsed, Kira felt the familiar rush of heat and denial flood her senses. "This," he continued, gesturing between them, "is not submission. This is the truth of our species," which meant we are complementary forces, the alpha who protects and the voice who unites. Still, Kira clung to her skepticism. She needed proof. She watched the tribe through the gaps in the door. On the other hand, they weren't the savages she was taught to fear. They were fiercely protective, sure, but they were also teaching their pups to weave, sharing meager resources, and tending to the old. They valued loyalty and community, concepts that the Citadel only paid lip service to. What if their savagery was only matched by the burning, raw honesty of their love for each other? The thought was a dangerous one, a new crack in her controlled facade. Ronan watched her eyes track the movement outside. From there, he knew her internal struggle. He knew the Citadel had tried to turn her against every primal instinct. "We have rules here," Ronan stated, his voice softening, a dangerous tenderness entering his tone. "Rule number 1, you won't leave the perimeter until the Citadel is dealt with. Rule number 2, you won't call your people. And rule number 3, you belong to us now." He knelt beside her and gently pushed the plate of food toward her. As the silence roared between them, he didn't demand she eat. He just waited, his primal authority tempered by the protective instinct of the bond. Kira glared at the food, but the scent of the smoked meat was intoxicating. She hadn't eaten a full meal in days, and her body, the vessel of the wolf-caller gene, was demanding nourishment. Despite that, she fought the urge to give in. "You can break me physically, Ronan," she managed, her voice tight. "You won't break my loyalty." "I don't need to break it, Kira," he countered, using her name for the first time with deliberate intimacy, the sound soft and possessive. When her name left his lips, she felt a profound shiver. "I just need you to look beyond the lie." He stood up, towering over her. "Eat. We hunt at dusk. You'll need the strength." Ronan left, securing the door once more. Kira stared at the food. What's worse, she realized that by eating it, she was accepting his protective role. a fundamental deviation from her hunter self-reliance. But then her stomach growled, a loud, undeniable sound of vulnerability. She needed her strength. Grabbing a berry, she reluctantly bit down. The flavor was explosive, wild, and real. The new reality was setting in. Survival meant reluctantly trusting her enemy. She felt it. Clear as day, the lines of loyalty were starting to blur, creating the initial agonizing pain of her character arc. Chapter 7. The Reluctant Alliance. That night, the moon was a fractured silver disk above the towering canopy of the Sunken Lands. Ronan had decided that a captive who knew the enemy's tactics was more valuable on a mission than locked away. Meanwhile, Kira saw it as a scouting opportunity. They moved through the dense forest, Ronan leading a small hunting party. With every step he took, the raw, masculine scent of him and the adrenaline of the hunt combined, making the mate bond thrum with an intoxicating excitement Kira couldn't suppress. "We take the high ground and wait for the wind shift," Kira whispered, adopting the low, terse tone of a field commander. "If we move too close, we risk scenting the target." Ronan stopped, his profile sharp against the moonlight. "We track the target by scent, Hunter. That's how we've survived. Your silence is a waste of energy." "Your scent is a risk," Kira countered, stepping closer. "The Citadel taught me that relying on scent makes you predictable. In fact, that's how I found you in the first place." His golden eyes flashed, a mixture of anger and dawning respect. "We'll do it your way," he conceded, his voice grudging. "Even so," he added a caveat. "If we fail, you answer to the tribe." They climbed. As if pulled by a string, they worked in perfect, terrifying sync. Ronan, with his natural grip and powerful vertical leaps, created the anchor points. Kira, utilizing her lightweight frame and specialized climbing techniques, moved with silent efficiency. From the ridge, Kira spotted the grazing herd immediately, pointing out the weakest target with cold, hunter logic. The one with the limp on the far left. Isolate it. Ronan watched her. She wasn't cold. She was focused. Her discipline wasn't a flaw. It was a devastating strength. As the wind shifted, Ronan gave the signal. What followed was a marvel of synchronized hunting. Ronan, relying on Kira's tactical position, utilized his superior speed to drive the target toward a narrow ravine. As the air thickened with the smell of the frantic chase, Kira used her knowledge of pressure points and leverage to execute a perfect silent takedown that saved Ronan energy. The hunt was successful. Ronan stood over the carcass, his chest heaving, his wolf sated. He looked at Kira, his gaze slow, deliberate, and entirely new. "You are not like the others," he finally admitted, his voice rough with genuine respect. "No," Kira replied, leaning heavily against a boulder, exhaustion making her defenses weak. "I'm better trained. Because of that, I was able to save your energy." Ronan approached her, and this time, the mate bond wasn't a brutal collision. It was a slow, insistent pull, like the tide. The moment their eyes locked, the line between enemy and ally blurred past recognition. "Better trained to kill shifters, yes," Ronan corrected, his gaze dropping to her exhausted face. He reached out and gently brushed a smudge of earth from her cheek. His touch was so gentle, so warm. "You are a weapon, Kira. A beautiful, efficient weapon. But then you pointed that weapon at the target I needed to save." He stepped closer, his scent enveloping her. "You are more than the Citadel's lie. I felt the truth tonight. You protected us." Kira didn't pull away from his touch. She was too tired, too exposed, and too undone by the primal respect in his eyes. Her breath caught. This man, this savage alpha, didn't want to break her will. He wanted to respect her strength. "They will be looking for me actively now," Kira warned, returning to logic as a defense. "My disappearance and the bodies outside the barrier will trigger a full-scale sweep. We need to prepare." Ronan smiled, a genuine, dazzling flash of teeth. "Then we prepare, Luna. Together." He took her hand, a simple, possessive act that felt like a powerful declaration. In the stillness that followed, Kira realized that the conflict had fully shifted. Her old life was over, and the war was officially beginning with her standing beside the man she was sent to kill. Chapter 8. The Weight of the Secret. The morning after the successful hunt, the tension between Kira and Ronan was a physical thing, thick and intoxicating. As fire bloomed beneath her skin, Kira understood her carefully constructed emotional walls were crumbling. Kira reconciled her desperate attraction to Ronan with the decades of ingrained fear and training. Her goal was no longer escape, but understanding. Ronan found her at the edge of the camp, watching the mist-shrouded peaks. He didn't speak. He just stood beside her, his warmth a solid, undeniable presence. The air thickened around them, heavy with unspoken desire. "The way you look at me," Kira finally murmured, her voice barely a whisper. "It's not just the alpha looking at his mate, it's the wolf looking at a hunter." Ronan sighed, a deep, rough sound that vibrated through the ground. Instead of arguing, he chose honesty, a massive risk for a man ruled by primal defense. "The rage of the primal wolf doesn't care for destiny, Kira," he admitted, turning to face her. "It sees the blood of the enemy, the one who carries the scent of their tormentors. Not only that, but the scars on my back, from a citadel capture years ago. They ache when you get too close." He reached out, his calloused hand gently cupping her cheek. As if pulled by a string, Kira leaned into the heat. "I have to fight the instinct to keep you at arm's length because trust has always meant weakness to my kind," he confessed, his voice tight with internal struggle. "But then, the mate bond slams back, and all I can feel is the need to shield you from everything, including myself." Kira's arc progression. Kira looked into his golden eyes, which were clouded not with rage, but with profound vulnerability. For the first time, she saw past the savage king and saw the man carrying the immense burden of a dying tribe. "I was taught that desire is a path to destruction," she said, her misbelief wavering. "That the only safety is in suppression." "Safety is an illusion built by liars," Ronan countered, his thumb tracing the fierce line of her jaw. "The wolf-caller lineage, your power, is what they fear. That's why they control all shifters, to ensure no voice can unite them against the Citadel." The realization of their shared victimhood and his terrifying honesty was the spark that broke her control. She didn't know what scared her more, the truth of the Citadel, or the fire this man ignited. "I'm done fighting the lie," Kira whispered, her hands rising to grip the rough leather of his tunic. "Good," Ronan growled, his golden eyes blazing with raw, possessive triumph. And just like that, everything changed. His mouth claimed hers, a kiss that was a clash of wills, a primal demand, and a confession of desperate, long-denied love. It was savage, consuming, and utterly real. As the bond pulsed, the primal energy exploded between them, a culmination of volatile conflict and fated desire. They moved together, bodies straining against each other, the rush of adrenaline from the fight replaced by the breathless, overwhelming demand of their destiny. Moments later, they fell together onto a bed of soft moss and furs, lost to the ancient rhythm of the mate bond. In the echo of his voice, whispering her name, Kira let go of years of iron control. She surrendered not to a man, but to the destiny that had been calling to her blood all along. "We can't stay here," Ronan said later, holding her fiercely, his heart pounding a steady, protective rhythm against her ear. "They will track the surge of the bond. It's too powerful." "We go deeper," Kira confirmed, her voice now steady with purpose, her hunter training merging with her new conviction. "To the heart of the sanctuary, which meant we were racing against time to reach the one place the Citadel had never been able to breach." Chapter 9. The Midpoint Shift. Unraveling the Lie. By the time they reached the deeper canyons of the Sunken Lands, 2 days had passed. The journey was fraught with danger, forcing them to rely on the terrifying synchronicity of their fighting styles. They arrived at the ancient sanctuary, a cathedral-like cavern carved into the mountain, protected by a waterfall and glowing runes. Inside, the walls were covered in intricate carvings, not just ancient history, but a detailed account of the last great shifter war. Kira walked the walls, tracing the images of wolves fighting humans and wolves fighting other wolves. "The Citadel told us the Forgotten Tribe tried to take over the world," Kira whispered, her fingers tracing a faded etching. "The Citadel lied," Ronan said, watching her carefully. As the truth unraveled, he knew this moment would either destroy her or cement their union forever. Kira moved to a central carving, illuminated by a shaft of light. It depicted a powerful woman, her hands raised, emitting a wave of sound, while a group of wolves, the Forgotten Tribe, willingly retreated into the earth. "This woman, she's marked with the same sigil as my family's old crest," Kira realized, her breath catching. Her thoughts spun. It wasn't a crest, it was a birthmark. "She was the last known wolf caller," Ronan explained. "The one they couldn't find, couldn't kill, and couldn't control. So the tribe made a choice. They didn't die. They used their magic to seal themselves away, hiding the wolf caller lineage, your ancestors, so the power could survive." Kira's knees buckled. In that moment, her entire life was rewritten. Her lineage wasn't a destructive weakness. It was a destiny for salvation. The Citadel didn't exist to protect the Order. It existed because of her family, to ensure the voice of unity never returned. Just like that, everything changed. Kira's misbelief, safety is found in absolute control, shattered, replaced by the fierce conviction that truth and unity were the only path to safety. "The lie. They were hiding me," Kira whispered, a new, cold fury replacing her fear. "They didn't want to kill the wolf caller. They wanted to kill the idea of unity." Suddenly, a hidden sensor near the cavern entrance chimed, a high-pitched electronic tone that cut through the ancient silence. "A perimeter alarm," Kira said, her hunter instincts immediately resurfacing, sharper than ever. What followed was the terrifying realization that the Citadel had found a way to pierce the magical veil. "How?" Ronan demanded, his body instantly shifting to protective rage. "It's an older model, high frequency," Kira analyzed, moving to examine the sensor. "It means they sent someone who knew our oldest protocols, which meant this wasn't just a patrol, this was a targeted strike." "We have to move," Ronan urged, grabbing her hand. Kira pulled him back, her eyes blazing with newfound purpose. "No. From there, we fight. They think they've cornered a fugitive, but they've just awoken a destiny." She looked at the carvings of her ancestors. "But first, I need to know how to use this." With a single glance, Ronan saw the alpha in her now, the fierce Luna who refused to run. As if summoned, his wolf accepted her command. They had achieved the midpoint shift. The goal had changed from mere survival to the liberation of all shifter kind, with the two fated enemies now standing unified against the true enemy. Chapter 10. Embracing the Voice. The revelation in the ancient sanctuary had not only changed Kira's loyalty, it had unlocked her focus. In the span of a breath, the hunter became the wolf caller. They spent the next week in the deepest recesses of the sanctuary. Ronan, his wolf now completely subservient to the mate bond, acted as her anchor. He didn't know what scared her more, the fierce strength of his loyalty, or the terror of failing him. "The power isn't a weapon, Kira," Ronan explained, his voice low and patient as he helped her focus. "It's a connection. They fear it because it bypasses their lies. It's the truth whispered directly to the heart of every shifter." Kira tried to force the sound, but only harsh, discordant screeches emerged. As the silence stretched, she grew frustrated. Her instinct, born from the Citadel, was to control and contain. "You have to let go of the rigid lines," Ronan urged, placing his hand over her diaphragm. His touch was so gentle, so warm. Feel the song of the land. Feel me. We are unified now. Project the unity. Not only that, but the physical contact, meant to ground her, sent dizzying waves of passion through the mate bond, making the training intense and intimate. Deep down, she knew the truth. Her voice wasn't just about sound. It was about belief. She closed her eyes, remembering the sight of the Citadel's sterile walls and the horrifying deception of her ancestors' sacrifice. She focused on Ronan's raw, protective loyalty, the strength of the forgotten tribe's faith. The voice is not a weakness. It is a shield. She opened her mouth and let the sound come not from her throat but from the core of her conviction. It was a single, pure note, like a struck crystal bell. A sound that resonated with the magic of the sanctuary. A quiet, powerful call of oneness. That night, Ronan pulled her close, his eyes gleaming with pride and fierce love. It's working. You are the promise made centuries ago. Rising external threat. The quiet was shattered by a high-pitched sonic pulse, the kind that could only be delivered by advanced Citadel tech. But then, it was followed by the scent of a familiar, highly specific tracking compound, Commander Valen's signature mark. Valen? Kira breathed, her blood running cold. Valen was her former mentor, a ruthless enforcer who knew every trick Kira used. Which meant Corvus wasn't playing. He had sent the best, the only person who knew Kira's weaknesses and her discipline inside and out. They've found a path through the magical veil, Ronan snarled, grabbing his blade. They're in the canyons. They're after me, but they'll settle for you, Kira stated, her voice sharp with a hunter's clarity. The stakes rose from mere survival to the imminent annihilation of the wolf-caller lineage. Chapter 11. The wolf-caller's first cry. As the sky darkened, the Citadel strike team, led by the grim, methodical commander Valen, pressed into the canyon. They moved with silent, synchronized precision, the order Kira was raised to revere, now deployed to kill everything she loved. Ronan's focus, protecting Kira and drawing the attackers away from the core of the tribe. His primal loyalty fueled a desperate, reckless defense. Kira's focus, use her new power, despite the risk of exposure, to save Ronan. Her core strength of conviction drove her actions. The fighting was immediate and chaotic. Ronan was a storm of raw muscle and savage defense, tearing through the disciplined lines of the Citadel soldiers. Meanwhile, Kira fought alongside him, relying on her hunter training while subtly trying to use the voice. The sounds were weak, ineffective against the sheer aggression of the attackers. Valen, however, bypassed the skirmish, moving with chilling focus directly toward Ronan. He was furious, knowing that Kira had compromised herself and that Ronan was the source of her betrayal. "Ronan, stop!" Valen's voice crackled over a tactical speaker. "She's an asset, Alpha. A tool. Don't die for her lie." Ronan ignored him, his primal loyalty a blinding rage. Despite that, Valen was quicker, capitalizing on a moment of distraction. Valen landed a precise, agonizing strike with a specialized blade slicing deep into Ronan's flank. Ronan roared, staggering backward, clutching the grievous wound. He fell against the canyon wall, momentarily defenseless. Valen raised his weapon for the killing blow, a gesture of final, cold efficiency. Before she could move, Kira saw the fatal commitment in Valen's eyes. This wasn't just a mission. It was personal. He will die. The tribe will fall. The truth will be buried. In that agonizing second, Kira shed every last vestige of her misbelief. The fear was gone, replaced by a searing, absolute conviction to protect this man, this destiny, this truth. A raw, powerful sound ripped from her chest. Not a conscious effort, but a scream of the wolf-caller gene finally given free rein by the highest emotional stake. It was a pure, unified voice of unity that bypassed the ear and slammed directly into the minds of every wolf present. As the bond pulsed, the Citadel wolves, trained against instinct for decades, staggered, freezing mid-step, looking utterly lost. Ronan gasped, the paralyzing pain momentarily overridden by a profound surge of restorative energy and loyalty, directed solely at him. Vane, a seasoned shifter, recoiled in shock, his mind momentarily scrambled by the purity of the sound. Just like that, everything changed. Ronan used the microsecond of confusion to lunge, slamming Vane against the rock, his raw power briefly overcoming the commander's specialized training. The others fled, panicked by the unprecedented failure of their mental training. Ronan stood over the crumpled form of Vane, bleeding heavily, but alive. In the quiet that followed, his golden eyes locked onto Kira's, filled with awe and a frightening realization. You called them, Ronan gasped, leaning heavily on the canyon wall. Kira was shaking, the massive effort draining her to the bone. I called you, she corrected, her voice weak but firm. I chose the truth. This was the point of no return. She had fully committed her power and her life to him. Vane, his face contorted by pain and strategic realization, struggled to rise. He looked not at Ronan, but at Kira. With a single glance, he understood the existential threat. The wolf caller is real, and she is now Ronan's. Corvus will know now, Vane hissed before Ronan knocked him unconscious. He knows what she is, so he will prepare the countermeasure. Ronan hauled Kira into his arms, carrying her deeper into the sanctuary, moving with desperate speed. To make things worse, Valen's message would soon reach the Citadel. The target was not the Alpha, but the Voice. The final war was now inevitable. Chapter 12. The Silence of the Voice. The scent of blood and scorched earth hung heavy in the sanctuary, a stark contrast to the usual fragrance of jasmine and pine. Come morning, Ronan's wound, though tended by the tribe's healers, pulsed with pain. Meanwhile, Valen's unconscious form, left behind by the fleeing hunters, was a chilling promise of the retribution to come. Ronan's focus: defend the tribe and Kira at all costs. His primal loyalty was focused on preparing the sanctuary's defenses, but the searing pain from his injury was a critical weakness. Kira's focus: stand with Ronan. Her newfound conviction demanded she use her voice to rally the defense. They stood at the primary defensive choke point in the canyon. But then, the silence broke, not with the sound of charging feet, but with a high-pitched, agonizing whine. The air fractured. A low, grinding frequency, painfully sharp, pierced the magical veil and slammed into Kira's mind. It was a targeted, aggressive sound, a weaponized silence. Kira screamed, clamping her hands over her ears. Her heart skipped a beat, betraying the sheer, visceral pain. The sound wasn't just noise, it was an active nullification field. The wolf collar gene, the source of unity, was being jammed. What followed was the terrifying realization that Alpha Corvus had wasted no time. He had found the countermeasure. The pain was paralyzing. Because of that, the raw, beautiful song of the sanctuary was replaced by a deafening, throbbing electronic drone. Her voice, the truth, the power, the destiny, was trapped, silenced. World building and antagonist strength. Suddenly, the Citadel forces poured into the canyon. They weren't just a strike team. They were an army, moving with brutal, mechanized efficiency. They were utilizing systemic power and propaganda, showing the tribe's natural defenses were useless against technology designed for war. Ronan roared, his primal rage rising to fill the terrifying void left by Kira's silenced power. He moved to attack, but the jammer's frequency caused his wolf to stagger, its senses scrambled. "It works! The witch is mute!" A hunter screamed, fueled by the knowledge that their lie was safe. Not only that, but the jamming signal was specifically targeting the unity sense in all shifters, turning the other tribesmen into disorganized fighters. The Citadel gained a crushing advantage. To make things worse, Ronan was fighting with a gut wound, relying purely on adrenaline and sheer will. Chapter 13. The Darkest Fall. Meanwhile, the battle turned into a massacre. Ronan fought like a dying titan, every swing of his blade fueled by the unwavering conviction of his primal loyalty to his mate. Ronan drove himself into the thickest part of the fighting, drawing the hunters toward him and away from Kira. With every heartbeat, his blood loss grew worse, slowing his movements. The descent commander Vane reappeared, leading the attack with renewed, ice-cold fury. He bypassed the tribe members, focused only on the Alpha and his mate. Vane engaged Ronan, and the fight was short and brutal. Ronan, weakened and disoriented by the jamming signal, fought valiantly, but Valen's specialized combat training found the weak spot. Vane landed a catastrophic blow, a thrust directly into the gut wound, a calculated lethal strike. Ronan gasped, staggering backward. Her heart skipped, stopping the breath in her lungs. He fell heavily against the cold rock, his large body crumpling. He was gone, silent, his golden eyes dulling. Kira screamed his name, but the sound was choked, lost beneath the grating electronic whine of the jammer. The hunters surrounded Kira immediately. As the air thickened with her despair and the stench of blood, she fought with the desperate ferocity of a trapped animal. But her focus was gone, her power nullified. Vane approached her, his face grim. "End of the line, Vane," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "You chose the savage over the structure. That's why you failed." He slapped a heavy metal collar around her neck, a dampener that hummed with the same crushing frequency as the jammer. The pain was immediate, sharp, and it successfully cut the electric thread of the mate bond. The lowest point, Kira was hauled away, forced to look back at the unmoving, bloody form of Ronan. The silence in her mind, the absence of his voice was confirmation. He was dead. Her power was useless. Her love was extinguished. Her misbelief, surrender to love and truth led to this devastating loss, had proven true. The Citadel had won. She was dragged back toward the perimeter, toward the oppressive gray walls of the Citadel. In the stillness that followed, Kira's mind was a void of despair. The story was over. The wolf caller was captured. The Alpha was dead. The lie was secured. Or was it? As she was roughly forced into a transport, the dampener on her neck working to suppress every instinct, a tiny, almost imperceptible thrum, a ghost of the mate bond, persisted beneath the electrical interference. Even so, it was so faint, so fragile, that she couldn't tell if it was hope or the final flicker of life before total darkness. Chapter 14. The Dark Night and the Thread of Destiny. The air in the sterile, soundproof cell smelled of bleach and absolute crushing defeat. By the time Kira's consciousness solidified, she was back in the Citadel, encased in gray concrete, the dampener collar a cold, painful presence on her neck. She was alone. Utterly, horribly alone. The electronic whine of the dampener silenced her voice, her power, and the vibrant life force of her internal wolf. To make things worse, the agonizing silence was proof. Ronan was dead, and her conviction had failed. I chose love over control. I chose truth over obedience. And it cost him everything. Her failure was an anvil on her chest, crushing her will. Still, as the hours bled into a gray haze, the pain of the dampener began to feel familiar, like a static field around her thoughts. She realized the machine wasn't meant to kill her. It was meant to isolate her. It muted her voice so she couldn't call, but it couldn't fully sever the connection itself. Maybe it was fate, but through the electronic fuzz, she felt a ghost, a faint, persistent thrum, the last dying pulse of the mate bond. It was weaker than a dying heartbeat, a fragile, fading thread of warmth that told her Ronan was not dead but dangerously close. Ronan's primal power was trying to hold on, and he was using the mate bond as a last, desperate anchor. The power isn't about controlling wolves. It's about the profound connection and unity between them. Not only that, but she saw the final truth of her power. The Citadel didn't just fear her voice. They feared her love. They feared the pure, unifying energy that bypassed their propaganda. Kira closed her eyes, ignoring the pain of the collar. Despite that, she focused everything she was, the disciplined hunter, the grieving mate, the awakened wolf caller, on that single faint thread. She poured her love, her grief, and her ferocious, unwavering conviction into the bond, not as a shout, but as a pure, focused wave of will. Ronan, fight the darkness. I'm here. You are not forgotten. You are the Alpha. As the bond pulsed, a tiny, visible spark of golden energy flared around her throat, fighting the metal dampener. Ronan sighed. In the chaos of the Sunken Lands, Ronan was fading fast, his body shutting down. But then, the faint thread of the mate bond, Kira's desperate, focused will, slammed into his fractured mind. It was a lifeline, a demand, a promise. His wolf, recognizing the desperate connection, answered. His eyes, dull with blood loss, snapped open, the golden fire reignited by her call. He was not saved, but he was anchored. Kira fell back, exhausted but triumphant. The tension broke. Ronan was alive. They brought me here to die, but they brought their destruction with me, Kira whispered to the cold concrete walls, which meant she had a new, clear objective: escape and become the signal for the final war. Her former cage would now be the launch pad of her destiny. Chapter 15. The Clarion Call. From there, the escape plan was pure hunter efficiency mixed with wolf collar defiance. Kira's focus: overpower the dampener, escape the Citadel, and send the signal to Ronan and every subjugated shifter. She used the small, specialized tools she had hidden in her boot heel, a hunter's last resort, to create a short circuit in the electronic lock of her cell. Meanwhile, the other subjugated shifters within the Citadel's prison levels began to feel the strange, low thrum of the struggling mate bond, stirring their latent hope. Kira burst from her cell, moving with the silent, lethal grace Vane had taught her. She bypassed security patrols, navigating the sterile, gray corridors with the intimate knowledge of a former top operative. Her first target was the communications tower, the highest point in the Citadel. As if the forest watched, she moved like a shadow, finally feeling the terrifying freedom of truly fighting for herself and for Ronan. She encountered two guards, former colleagues. They raised their stunners, their faces masks of surprise. "Vane, stand down!" "The lie ends now," Kira stated, her voice tight but unwavering. She felt it, clear as day. The electronic drone from her collar was failing under the strain of her will. She used a Citadel standard disarm maneuver, taking out both guards with lightning speed. Because of that, she acquired her first tool, a high-powered communication override module. Kira reached the roof of the Citadel. The night air was sharp and cold. She knelt, rigging the captured communication module to the main antenna, a massive conductor of the Citadel's propaganda. She stood tall, looking out over the sleeping, subjugated world. The pain from the dampener was excruciating, 1,000 needles of white noise. But then, she forced her focus, channeling her conviction, her love for Ronan, and the terrifying truth of her lineage into a single, unified sound. She didn't whisper. She didn't shout. She sang. The sound ripped through the electronic dampening, overriding the Citadel's signals and tearing through the night sky. It wasn't a destructive frequency. It was a pure, profound chord of unity, the true voice of the wolf caller. As the echo faded, the clarion call resonated in the mind of every shifter within range, shattering the years of fear and control. Subjugated wolves gasped. Pack members looked at each other, the truth of their communal existence suddenly undeniable. Deep in the Sunken Lands, Ronan, fighting for life, felt the overwhelming surge of the call. It wasn't just a signal, it was her. The voice was the confirmation he needed. His strength surged, not just from his body, but from the spiritual lifeline she had cast. Just like that, everything changed. His eyes snapped fully open. The Alpha lived. Kira smiled, tears freezing on her cheeks, exhausted but victorious. The wind carried his name, Ronan, Her work here was done. She had escaped, and she had sent the signal. But then, a cold, smooth voice cut through the air. Beautiful, Vane. A magnificent sound. But a sound we will silence forever. Alpha Corvus, the supreme antagonist, stood 10 feet away, flanked by heavily armed guards, his face a mask of cold fury. What followed was the terrifying realization that her escape was anticipated. The final confrontation was not waiting for them in the Sunken Lands. It was here, now. Kira was cornered, but she had delivered the message. The final confrontation, the test of destiny, was about to begin. Chapter 16, The Final Duel and the Voice of Unity. The moment Alpha Corvus's cold voice cut through the night, Kira knew the final fight was here. As if the world narrowed, it was just her, the antagonist, and the vast, subjugated city below. Kira's focus: overpower Corvus's control and protect the signal she just broadcast. Her core strength, unwavering conviction, was now pure, distilled light against Corvus's darkness. Corvus's focus: silence the wolf caller, Kira, and restore the systemic power of the Citadel. Your little song is nothing, Vane, Corvus sneered, a look of chilling contempt on his face. A primal twitch. But then, it will be the last sound you ever make. He raised his hand. Before he could move, a low feral howl ripped through the Citadel's main gate below, a sound of defiant, desperate primal loyalty that matched the rhythm Kira had just sent out. Not only that, but the gate exploded. Ronan burst onto the grounds, his body scarred, his pace fast, leading the remaining rallied warriors of the Forgotten Tribe. You should have made sure I was dead, Corvus! Ronan roared, his voice thick with raw rage and the pure surge of the mate bond. His eyes were molten gold, focused entirely on the tyrant. Corvus hesitated, his composure cracking. His guards moved to intercept Ronan, but then Kira unleashed her power. She stepped to the edge of the roof, ignoring the agony of the failing dampener on her neck. She channeled the unity she felt with Ronan, with the tribe, and with the earth itself. The pure, amplified sound of the wolf caller slammed into the Citadel's final electronic countermeasure, shattering it. The silence that followed was absolute, immediately replaced by the voice of unity. Kira's ultimate power. The sound wave didn't paralyze, it exposed. It hit the Citadel guards, forcing them to feel the brutal truth of the tyranny they served. As the bond pulsed, a tidal wave of doubt and defiance washed over the enemy wolves. They faltered, shields dropping, their eyes wide with agonizing realization. Ronan, empowered by Kira's call, was a force of focused destruction. He ignored the struggling guards and charged Corvus, their confrontation a final, symbolic duel between destiny and the illusion of control. Corvus was skilled, relying on calculated cruelty and superior armor. On the other hand, Ronan was pure, passionate righteousness. He fought not just with muscle, but with the primal loyalty of a man who had lost everything and found his destiny. Corvus lunged, aiming for Ronan's throat. Instead, Ronan ducked, his hand shooting out to rip the tyrant's armor away, exposing the man underneath. You can't control what's real, Ronan roared, seizing the moment. In that moment, he saw the fear of losing power in Corvus's eyes. Ronan delivered the final, decisive blow. Corvus fell, defeated, his tyranny ending not with a whisper, but with the roar of a united Alpha. And just like that, everything changed. Chapter 17, The Luna's Dawn, Falling Action. With the organization defeated, the fighting ceased instantly. The remaining Citadel shifters dropped their weapons, confused and broken, unable to ignore the unifying power of Kira's voice that still hummed in the air. Kira ran to Ronan, her heart hammering. She slid her arms around his waist, oblivious to the blood and grime, feeling the steady, powerful rhythm of his heart beneath her cheek. She felt it, clear as day. The mate bond was whole, strong, and true. Ronan, though wounded, held her close, then stood to face the remaining shifters of the Citadel and the weary warriors of the Forgotten Tribe. The lie ends today, Ronan announced, his voice ringing with authority. For generations, they tried to kill the wolf-caller lineage because they feared the unity it represents. They feared her. He turned, drawing Kira into his side, publicly embracing her. As if fate demanded it, he spoke the final words of the conflict. "Kira Vane, the wolf-caller is my Luna," he declared, his eyes blazing with fierce love and triumph. "She is the truth that shattered their control, and she is the one who brought the Forgotten back to power. That's why we fight no more. We build." The Citadel shifters, humbled and disoriented by the pervasive truth of the wolf-caller's power, looked to Ronan, then to Kira. The seeds of the new world were sown in that moment. From there, Ronan and Kira worked tirelessly. They established the Sunken Lands as the recognized sanctuary, sending envoys to the subjugated packs, inviting them to the new order based on respect and truth, not fear and control. On the other hand, they used Kira's vast knowledge of Citadel operations and technology to dismantle the antagonist's systemic power entirely. The power of their destined love had overcome the illusion of control. The savage beast and the disciplined weapon had found their perfect, passionate equilibrium. 1 year later, the Sunken Lands were no longer merely a hidden sanctuary. They were a capital. Diverse shifters, once scattered and fearful, moved freely across the land, guided by the unified vision of their Alpha and Luna. Kira stood on the high cliff overlooking the valleys, no longer wearing the tactical gray of a hunter, but the soft, durable hide of a leader. She was confident, assured, and pregnant, a new life growing from their volatile, fated union. Ronan came up behind her, wrapping his powerful arms around her, his massive hands resting possessively and tenderly on her belly. As the bond pulsed, it was no longer a violent collision, but a warm, steady stream of life and belonging. "They are safe now," Ronan murmured, his voice now softened by a year of peace and love. Kira leaned back against him, feeling the steady, warm presence of his wolf. The fear was gone. The wolf-caller had fulfilled her destiny. "I was taught to fear the beast," Kira whispered, her voice filled with quiet wonder, using the words of her first terrifying realization. But then she turned her head to kiss his rough jaw. "But in his arms, in the heart of the enemy, I realized his savagery was only matched by the burning, raw honesty of his love." She looked out over the land, the new beginning stretching into a hopeful future. She felt it, clear as day. The war was over, and their undeniable, destined love was the fierce protector of the world. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to this channel for more stories, and also don't forget to hit the like button.